Welcome to episode 30.
Image of the Witch.
So your image may have developed from Shakespeare,
Morticia Adams,
or Charmed,
maybe even Mary Poppins.
Ooh, or all of the above. But we're going to talk a little bit more about our thinking about the way witches are portrayed today in today's culture.
As a whole, or even piecing them together to form some sort of representation of how we feel.
Indeed.
Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Witchy Wit podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
Ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in every body and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
Races,
and backgrounds.
with a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true. Our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves. Welcome into Circle with us. We're so grateful to have you here with us today at Witchy Wit Podcast. Before we jump into today's topic, I wanted to take a moment and each of us will just check in kind of about what's going on in our lives outside of the podcast. So I'll go ahead and start. So I'm on social media and I've been cruising along on my Instagram account, and there's this account that keeps advertising to me. It's an underwear brand. And so I've been really interested in it because I love their advertising is like very diverse in the way that the different bodies look. And I did some research on their company, and they donate to Planned Parenthood and some other organizations I know that I really care about. So I was like all in on it. But here's the interesting thing. I noticed that when you order underwear from them, they include a tarot card in your...
No,
I know,
stop.
I know.
Really?
I know. So at first I was like, oh, cool. They include a tarot card. Wait a second. They include a tarot card in my underwear order? Like they include like a divinatory, like a piece of, for me, a piece of like sacred divinatory practice. And then my next thought was like, okay, so if I decide to order underwear from them, which I haven't decided to or not yet, because this happened.
Yeah.
So then I'm thinking like, do I take the card that is given to me as a piece of divinatory,
Oh, wow. Yeah. Like, what do you do with the card?
What do you do with the card?
Like, is it a nice souvenir, or does it say something about your body, or your, like...
Right?
So when you talk about underwear, is it like bras and panties, or...
They're just as far as I know, just an underwear, like your
underpants.
Your underpants.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, yeah, I'm wondering... Wow.
Yeah, and then I had this whole thing, so I sent it to my former roommate, who's also a member of our circle. I texted it to her and was like, I'm not sure how to feel about this.
Yeah.
Is this cool that something that we care about is like being embraced by even an underwear company?
Yeah.
Or is this like sacrilegious? Or is this...
Yeah.
I'm really confused around it. And how to feel around it.
Okay, so of course this is the question I'm going to ask. Do you know what kind of deck it was? Was it like the Rider-Waite deck?
It was the Rider-Waite. I know.
Okay.
So I like screen capped and I'm like zooming in like, and then I'm wondering too, like, do they only send major arcana, or do they like I don't know. Like, what if you get a tower with your thong purchase?
What does that say? Wow. So do they give any sort of indication why they do that?
No, I looked into it. They just say like, it's just like a blurb.
Wow.
We'll send you a tarot card with purchase of your underpants.
So, okay, so maybe the basic idea is you buy like 78 pairs of underwear and eventually you have the whole deck. Wow. Okay. I suppose you don't want to say the name of the company, but that's... Wow.
It's interesting.
And you found this on like Facebook or Instagram or something?
They advertised to me on Instagram.
Okay.
I think they also now advertise to me because I've like stalked their page because of it. I've spent an unnecessary amount of time trying to figure out how I feel about this occurrence. Because I think, and this kind of ties into with what we'll talk about later on in the episode, but I understand the absorbing of witchcraft and being a witch into into like mainstream culture.
Right.
You know, like a couple of years ago, we passed around the link to like a witch starter kit.
Oh, yes.
That was being sold by some beauty company.
Yes.
Had like a sage thing and a couple crystals, and we kind of talked about like selling like our culture being appropriated and you know, and all that stuff. And I feel like I'm pretty comfortable around certain parts of that happening. Like it's just a part of the natural evolution of culture. But okay. I don't know what to do with the underwear thing.
so I'm wondering, okay, so let's say, let's flip this a little bit. Let's say it's a brassiere company, and with every bra that you buy, you get like a little mini Bible. I mean, is it kind of the same? I mean, so does that clarify this, or does that just further muddy the... I mean, like, why? Or maybe they're not thinking of it as a religious symbol. Maybe they're thinking of it as a cultural thing, or just something cutesy. So
I imagine
they're kind of demeaning it.
I kind of think they're thinking about it as something kind of like hip and trendy and like, you know,
gotcha.
like, ooh, tarot cards. Like these are kind of edgy and trendy and hip or whatever.
Right. That makes sense.
I don't think they're like, divinatory tool sent out with every purchase of boy shorts.
Right. Okay. That's it. Okay. That's, that's I don't know if I consider it disturbing, but I just think it's just an example of how people just don't think things through, maybe. You know, like they like you say, they think it's hip and trendy and not recognizing that it's just a surface thing that stands for a whole lot, which is what a tarot card is, right?
Totally.
Like, whoa.
How symbolic.
Yeah.
And my roommate, my former roommate, who's also in a circle with us, she messaged me back and she's like, I have no idea how to feel about this. And I was like, okay, I'm glad that you and I are both in the same boat. Neither of us really know
what to do with that.
Yeah. It's just interesting.
That's pretty amazing. I'm gonna go look now and see, just for, you know, just out of curiosity.
It is a curiosity.
See how they're kind of tying that together. Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what about you? What's going on with you?
Pretty much the same thing that's always going on with me, grading. You know, so I every time it's time for me to sit down and do a huge, you know, buttload of grading, I always think, why am I doing, you know, what's the real purpose of this, right? So on one level, it's basically me giving students feedback about their thinking, about their writing, how they're constructing their arguments, etc. But then you have to give a grade. And I've always, I haven't resisted it, but I've always thought so much about it that it kind of stymies me for a while. It makes, you know, I have to stop and think about, you know, why am I giving a grade? Why does my institution want me to give a grade? And why do the students want a grade, if they want a grade, right? And there's so many different levels to that. There's, you know, this idea of, well, we have to grade them or they won't do the work. That's, you know, there's that kind of punitive reason for holding a grade over a student's head. It's also a reward for going. It's like a sticker, right? It's also a reward. It can be a reward for doing good work, and so that those are the two ends of the spectrum. And then there's a whole lot of, to me, a lot of not yuckiness, but unclear thinking that happens in between those two levels, and I'm always confronted with it when I'm trying to grade. And so it's a time for me to kind of just sit and think about, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And I never really come out of it with a good answer, because it's not up to me, right? I'm in a situation where this is kind of the way things go. And if you do something outside of how the things normally go, there's a lot of justification that you have to bring into it. Anyway, I say all of that just to say I'm mired down by grading, and on top of the actual grading that I do, I have to sit and think about, why am I grading? And then I have to shut that down and actually grade, right? So it's a great period for me to kind of think about what I do, but it's also just a period where I'm just, you know, drowning in papers, and as soon as I get one set done, another set comes in, and I have to remind myself that I brought this shit on myself, because if I didn't assign the work, I wouldn't have to grade the work. But yeah, it's kind of like the good and the bad keeps kind of circling around as I'm thinking about this, on top of, you know, like, I could be just, you know, sitting watching Game of Thrones or something.
Grading itself is such an existential crisis to be in, and then it sounds like you're having an existential like
right.
an existential like deep dive into the meaning behind this existential.
I know, just to begin with. So yeah, it's a fruitful period for me on many levels, but it's also, there's just a soul sucking element to it, depending on the quality of the papers that you're getting. So I just take a deep breath and, pour myself another cup of tea and pick up the next pile.
Hopefully, if there are any teachers listening out there, they will feel seen.
Yes. Yes.
And
yes.
Non-teachers
I'm feeling you. I'm feeling you.
Non-teachers are like, why does she keep talking about grading?
Like, who cares?
And all the teachers are like, yes.
We get this.
We understand.
Yeah, exactly. So our episode today is about the images that we have of witches in pop culture and in literature and music. And I'd like to start with my very first experience of a witch, of knowing what a witch is, that I remember. I may have had some before that. And that was my sister and I. My mom had bought like a series of books. It was the plays of Shakespeare. And my sister and I, because we were such bizarre children, growing up in the hood, we would sit inside and read Shakespeare plays. Okay, so that was just the beginning. So we would sit and we read. I remember us reading Macbeth, and we got to the double toilet trouble. We like lost our shit. That was our favorite part. We read that part, and I think I could probably still read it today if I needed to. We memorized that, and we'd go double, and then the other one say boiling trouble. And it drove our parents nuts actually, and it's their own fault for buying us the unabridged collection of Shakespeare. But so our first is of these magical women who could predict for Macbeth, his future. They knew who he was, and I wondered, how did they know that? Did they know it from the cauldron, or because that part's not explained? But that was my first image of a witch. What about with you?
So for me, I think my first images of witches were from the television. Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting because I wasn't necessarily looking consciously for the image of a witch, mm-hmm. but I was seeking to find validation in somewhere. And I think whenever I was thinking about this, I think whenever we're on the outside of a culture and not told and given what we're supposed to be, or we're not given what we actually are, we're just constantly getting what we're supposed to be.
Gotcha.
And so then I'm looking for examples of what I actually am, and I never found one and was like, I am that, I must go towards that. It was always just trying to find these little pieces that were affirming.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Who I was and what I felt and what I felt was true in me, that I wasn't getting affirmed anywhere else.
Right.
So one of them was Charmed.
Oh, I love that.
And just the theme song, I remember.
Yes,
I know. Yes! Okay, here we go. This is an authentic moment right here.
I love that thing. Oh my gosh, when I found the song in other places. Oh my god, it just blew my head up.
It's such a witchy song.
It is such.
And then I found out years later that it's I am the sun, I am the air. Mm-hmm. Is not even the SUN and the AIR. And I'm like, they wrote it wrong.
I know that when I finally saw the words, I was thinking,
nuh-uh. It's the SON, like sun, and then like air, heir to a throne.
Right, exactly.
And I'm like, bull.
That's right. I call bullshit on that.
Wrong.
Yes.
You wrote it wrong.
This is what you really meant.
They did.
I know.
It's such a good song.
Yeah, it is. It's an incredible song. And I think I'd seen the show a couple of times. It just missed the beginning. And the first time I actually saw the show from the beginning and heard that song, I missed the next scene because I was just sitting there with my mm-hmm. head being exploded,
right?
Just thinking, because music so resonates for both of us, and yeah.
It's so good. It's
mm-hmm,
so good.
Mm-hmm. It is. So tell me, did you identify in particular with one of the sisters?
So I don't remember it enough to really. Mm-hmm. What I do remember is the song, mm-hmm. and then I remember jamming with them, and then mm-hmm. We'll talk about it later. But mm-hmm. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, mm-hmm. I loved Willow, mm-hmm. and I really identified with her, and so it was just finding characters that seemed powerful and intuitive, and for me, in a way, feminine.
Yes.
Because I do identify as feminine, mm-hmm. so mm-hmm. just the characters that were women that were strong and that what I would describe as like intuitively powerful in a magical way.
Right. So that brings me to my next experience that I remember, and that was Bell Book and Candle. I just, so shows you how old I am. But I just remember seeing that movie. It was, like on the Saturday afternoon matinee or something on TV. And again, now this was back before you could rewind stuff and you could, see it again and again and again. You just had to catch it on television when they showed it. And I just wished at that point that I could just see that film over and over again so I could get all the little details, because that to me was such a magical life. She was beautiful. It's Kim Novak, so she was really beautiful. But she was also very charming and witty and just, and it was in New York. I think it was New York City. I'm pretty sure it was New York City. And so she was kind of in a situation that was similar to mine. She wasn't out in the woods, but she was, living her life, and she was living large. I mean, she was enjoying herself. And so I really loved that image. Very, very like she had a sense of herself. She was a strong woman. And her brother was Jack Lemmon, and he played the bongos. So I was like, whoa, he was a beatnik. So I just really love that. Yeah.
I think too, for like in that vein of like older movies, Mary Poppins. I mean, I don't think it's common for people to describe her as a witch. But
yes, yeah.
But I remember seeing her and the way, so I'm an Enneagram 2, so I'm like a caretaker. So seeing the way she cared for them, but she had some strong boundaries.
Yes.
She was firm.
Yes, she was.
She didn't let them get away with anything.
No.
But I loved her power, her power to like take care of others and herself.
Yes.
And then I also loved her magic, both to get things done, but also to bring joy.
Yes.
And so I remember being really attracted to her. Also, they fly.
Yes.
So, oh my gosh. But so I now know I like music that's in minor. But like the Chimney Sweeper song, I love the Chimney Sweeper song.
Yes, yeah. Dick Van
Dyke,
yes.
yeah. But I loved how they kind of flew around and they walked up the smoke, and I remember just thinking like,
oh right, I'd forgotten about that.
I would love to walk up the smoke clouds into the sky.
Yeah, it was brilliant imagery, even for that that time period, but really brilliant imagery and very mad. I mean, like they lived kind of mundane lives. I mean, they weren't kings or queens or nobles or whatever. But it was magical. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
So would you define Mary Poppins as a witch?
I certainly would. And it's in fact what it reminded me of was I was reading a Harry Potter fan fiction, and so the trope of Harry is that he's downtrodden by his family, but the wizarding world treats him crappy too, right? And there's no one who really looks out for him. And so in this fan fiction, they have Mary Poppins come in and she gives him the medicine and the whole bit. And she kind of makes him the super aware guy that he should have been. And so I love it because they put her in the wizarding world, and and it makes sense. Everything she does makes so much sense. So yeah, I never thought about it at the time, but I can so see the witchiness in her. So what are some of the images of witch that we see out in pop culture? Would you care to start?
Yes. So as we were thinking about this, we decided that there really is no one image, and that also that no image is realistic. And also all of these images are set to not be successful, because ultimately they're constructed in a patriarchal culture who oftentimes is trying to pigeonhole a powerful woman into a way that is somehow demonizing her or making it to where she can't ever really get what she wants or be a part of the culture at large. In some feminist literature, feminist criticism, we call that disciplining the female body. So the idea of that the woman, the powerful woman, won't triumph, or will only triumph for a little bit of time, but will eventually be brought back into the norm somehow, either brought back in by accepting it and marrying someone and becoming normal, or dying, being killed or dying or exiled, so that she is not actually infecting other women. I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that. And I feel such, I just feel that pressure in day-to-day life, because it just feels like just by showing up as who I am in this way, it's like I have to constantly have like one hand pushing back and being like to mainstream culture and be like,
right.
I want room for myself. So I'm just
Yes.
like constantly have to like
yes.
hold that back.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll talk about this later on,
Mm-hmm.
like in another episode, but even like neither of us are married.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so even just like, I don't have children, you know, and so it's just like a constant, like,
yes.
I'm
yes.
not married. I do not have children. I am a witch.
Mm-hmm.
Just let me be.
Leave me alone. Yeah, exactly. No, it's so true. It's so true. So what's,
So one of the first ones we
mm-hmm.
talked about was the love and light witch, and in our circle we commonly refer to this as the fluffy bunny witch.
Yes. Yeah, so this is someone, we have some examples of that, maybe like at the beginning of her witchy career, Willow, Glinda, the good witch, and these are like the the light and love. They're beautiful, they're sweet, they use their magic for good. And they're like the girl next door. They're kind of sweet and innocent, kind of ingenue. I don't know if that's a word, but they're ingenue-like.
Ingenue. It's like ingenue plus ennui. Ingenue.
I love that. Yeah. So and those are like kind of the good witches. The problem with that is, like we saw with Willow, and sometimes they don't stay that way, because for a number of different reasons, like maybe they're not as powerful.
So as someone who is, I think I am optimistic, I'm positive, I'm upbeat. I've often been attracted to these love and light, fluff, as we're calling them, love and light, and as we call them kind of in our circle, like the fluffy bunny witches, because I see myself in the optimism and the positivity and the bubbliness. Those are all things that I am. My personality is. And I think one of the problems with limiting a character or a person, because I think this happens in real life too, is that we get the toxic positivity.
Right. This idea, well, there's a couple of different ways of thinking this. First of all, with any sort of stereotype, that's not just one person, it's not just that, right? And so particularly with something like this, if they have we have this image of them as this, and they decide, today I'm going to be depressed. I mean, because we, as human beings, we have days when we're just not always up. It's kind of, it's like they're falling out of their role. So they're not in the capsule that I don't know if we have put them in there, but they're not in that kind of capsule. And on a certain level, that is kind of disciplining them as well. That's kind of forcing them to be this one type of thing, right?
And no human is ever, like you said, like we have up days, we have down days. So no human is ever all light or all darkness. And I think that for me, my faith is not all of one and not the other, because it is what the world is. It is what energy is. It is what magic is. It is what humanity is, which is this mixture of light and dark. And
to one other kind of dangerous angle to take on this is thinking that is witchiness. Like we've talked about this a couple of episodes ago, but that's, and if you're not that, then there's something wrong with you, right? So we have that stereotype. I don't want to say stereotype, but there is that type or category, and it's just one of many, and it fits for some people, and that's great. There's dangers. There's always pluses and minuses with everything, right?
Yes, and I really dislike, and I feel a lot of pushing back against this sort of like sanctifying of the light and then demonizing of the dark.
Yes,
like
yes.
I'm sure people have written like encyclopedias around what this means about, and all the, like, symbolically, literally, all that stuff. But with the love and the light and the fluffy bunny, it's like, oh, they're doing all of the good things. Well, then what does that mean about this other stuff, which is just as important, and
it needs to be addressed.
Yes, and just as magical, if not more, and powerful, if not more.
Yeah, and so since we were talking about that, let's kind of go to another image that might be considered antithetical to that, and that's the goth. Right?
The goth witch. Which,
seems to be kind of the really popular version of it now. I mean, that's the one that you see when people, how do I want to put this? We see that a lot in youth culture. This idea that to be witchy, you have to wear your black, and you have to wear the black lace and the fingerless gloves, and maybe a witch hat, which of course, all of this is sounding
all of
pretty
these
nice.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I love the black.
Okay, so maybe I'm goth. And then maybe some black lipstick and black eyeliner and the whole bit. But that's just an appearance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with the fluffy bunny pagan, we have this, this thinking about, well, my magic is light and I do good things. And so what is the goth magic? So, like we sometimes we maybe get hung up on the image of it. What does that mean? Like once you get past what they look like?
Well, they're dark. They're not, they're misunderstood. They're alone.
Yes,
they're
yes.
shunned by culture.
Yes.
Nobody understands them.
Yes, I love that. And so would you say that no one understands their magic? Like like when they do magic, or if they do magic?
They're feared. Like Nancy from the original The Craft,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the girls in the new Craft movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're they're misunderstood, and they're as they say in The Craft, the weirdos.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. No, I just have to say this because I love that word weird, and we think of it as something that's kind of outside the pale, but weird just basically means supernatural, right? So when you talk about the weird sisters, those are the magical women who can tell fortunes and things like that. So I love we're the weirdos, and you really are, right?
And throwback to Macbeth, the weird sisters hand in hand, like they use that word in Macbeth
exactly.
as well.
Yes. But we also see this in that kind of goth is also like the misunderstood teen, right? So we have this angsty, kind of teen that we see a lot in popular culture. Some of the examples, like you mentioned The Craft, but Carrie. I don't know if she's actually a witch.
I don't know.
She's psychokinetic.
We already threw Mary Poppins in here. I would say like we're saying witch-ish.
Yeah, witch-ish.
She
Okay.
is psychokinetic, but she does have the powers. But she also is this horribly victimized, but also powerful, misunderstood.
Yes, exactly.
Teen.
Yeah. And her mother does have like a huge bank of candles when she gets back after the prom. Remember?
Super witchy.
Which is but her mother's of course also nuts.
Super messed up. Super messed up.
So these are not necessarily all the very positive images, and that's kind of the point too, right?
Right.
Is that they'll have these things that are seductive and tempt you towards it, but because this is popular culture, there's something that always goes wrong, right? Like in the craft.
The Craft, yeah.
At the first half of it or 3/4 of it.
Yeah, which is why I only watched the first 2/3 of The Craft.
Oh, really? And then you just stop. I never thought about doing that.
I stop after the ritual on the beach.
Yes.
I just stop it there.
Oh my gosh, I never thought that you could just like not watch the whole movie. I just
choose to stop it there. I mean, and I feel like I can do that. I don't need to be taught that lesson because I do understand the impact that magic has.
Yes.
That our actions have. So I feel like I understand that lesson. So I just enjoy candy the first 2/3, and then I just stop.
But see, that's the perfect example I have of that idea that these women have to be disciplined. So in this case, it shows that they're being empowered and not allowing themselves to remain victims. What happens is that same power kind of turns on them and turns them into something different, right? And if you look at a lot of these stories, that's going to be the case, that there's somehow something that happens that keeps them from being the positive, empowered woman that you see at the beginning, right?
Back at the towards the beginning of my journey into trying to figure out who and what I am, I didn't know where else to go except for a bookstore, which is like Amazon, but it's in person.
But there are books that you can actually hold in your hand.
Yes. So I would go peruse the New Age section at Barnes and Noble or Borders or whatever. Yes. And also because I just love the way books smell.
Yes.
But I remember
the artifact.
I remember pulling some of the books out. No book ever really helped me because to me it's a practice of energy, and it's hard or impossible for me to get that from a book. But I remember looking at some of the books, and there was even like the Teen Witch books.
Oh my gosh,
showed I don't know, I'm making this up. I don't remember, like 4 or 5 teens, but they're all like standing on they're all standing at the picture on the cover, and their arms are crossed. They all look various types of sassy and they're revolting against something.
Yes, yes. Like counterculture real estate agents.
Right. They're like, I'm so not normal. I'm too cool for school.
Yes.
How nerdy
Yeah.
am I right now? I just use the phrase too cool
Too
for
cool.
school.
I know, but that's all right. I love you still. But see, and that's the thing, and that's what's so attractive at first, right? Is that they're not allowing themselves to be brought down by the culture, but the culture brings them down at the end. Well, in many,
Right.
well,
In mainstream culture,
Mm-hmm.
they are brought down because we can't have these. We just can't let these hooligans run wild.
That's right. These people who are defining themselves as opposed to letting us define them, right?
Ooh.
Yeah. What?
I'm just going to chew on that for the next 3 years. These people who are defining themselves as opposed to letting us define them. I feel like you just summarized my entire existence in one like off the cuff phrase.
I'm so glad. I try.
And just a moment of transparency. It's moments like this. This is that is one of the reasons why I value our over all the years. I value our conversations. You just say things like that, and then my mind is blown. Like 3 a.m., I'll wake up and be like thinking about that.
that bitch is deep. Well, thank you so much. I try. Actually, I don't try it. You just bring this out of me, so thank you so much. Yeah.
I wanted to say that this idea of the angsty teen or the goth. I remember being served that image so often, and I identified with so many of the feelings that these characters or witches or whatever were having, like not fitting in, being different, not being understood, maybe not even understanding themselves. And I really identified with that. But then I'm naturally like happy and bubbly and optimistic, which is why I also identified with that fluffy bunny, love and light witch construct too. And so I just remember like not understanding who I am or how to be because I couldn't find examples of it.
Yes.
So I don't know if you know this about me. When I first started coming to our circle, all these years ago, like over 15 years ago, when I would pick out clothes that were bright and colorful.
No.
Yes. When I would show up for circle, because I wanted to push against this idea of like the dark goth witch.
Yes.
And I wanted to like be clear to like show symbolically that was not me. Yeah. And I had some pretty negative experiences in a group prior to the circle with like what I would call like some unhealthy stuff and like mental health issues and things like that. And I was afraid of that happening again. But I mean, no one gives a flying you know what about like the color of my shirt.
Yeah. But on a certain, okay, so maybe not, but it does, the idea of that when one looks at you, then that color kind of suffuses. So maybe psychically or maybe, or what's the word? Unconsciously, you're actually kind of saying something about yourself. I mean, clothing choices are kind of telling people something about you. You may not know what at the time. And, but I just found that's so interesting.
But what is really, I think, the true version of me is that I love to wear black. I just love black. Black is slimming.
Yeah.
Black is like
it goes
beautiful,
with
colorful. Right. I don't like to spend a lot of time and energy on my wardrobe. So if I have all different, shades of black and gray, it's easy to match things because I don't really care so much about clothes. But in this first time when we were meeting, I was just in this like power struggle with myself and what I now think culture at large of trying to express who I am as a witch and not understanding these categories because none of them are authentic.
No, of course. And probably a part of this is kind of that start as you mean to go on. You wanted to just state at the beginning. So if it's really clear you're not this, that, or the other, right? That you're something different or you're maybe like unique. There's the thought. So another image that we see, and this is one that I think attracted me to Kim Novak in Bell Book and Candle, is this sexy temptress. And we have a lot of models of that as well, because the sexy temptress also is a woman who is comfortable in her skin for the most part. And that's probably some of the attractiveness of her. But I just remember Kim Novak kind of sitting the way you kind of with your legs curled up under her, and just kind of sitting there talking to someone. I can't remember who she's talking to, and just being wearing like a little mock turtleneck and just being so gorgeous in mundane clothes, but really super attractive because she was so comfortable and so powerful.
I think a lot of the sexy comes from not what we would normally describe as like sexy, like curvaceous or large breasts or whatever. But I mean, a lot of them do have that. But so much of the sexy comes from the power and the grace that these witches hold, and the way that they are confident, and they move,
yes,
and the way that they move in the space and take up space and draw attention and are comfortable with that.
That's right. That's exactly right. That they own their space, and they kind of like, come hither, like, you can have some of the space too if you want it, you know. And that's what's so tempting, right? And to men, they might respond in a sexual way, because that come hither might be, this is an invitation to be in relationship with me. And for women, it could be the same thing too. I see that as in, come, you can be this too. Not you can touch me or have me, but you can be me, you know? And that's what I find so sexy about some of those. So Kim Novak and Bell Book and Candle, what are some of the ones that you remember?
So for me, I remember I read this series called the Fear Street series. It was a Fear Street series, and it's a book series by R.L. Stine, who also I think was more famous for Goosebumps. I somehow jumped over the Goosebumps, which is like elementary or middle school age maybe, and the Fear Street series was like more like a little bit older. It was definitely YA, young adult, but I was obsessed with this. It was the Fear Street saga. It was 3 books, and it was all about this family from like colonial times that was growing up, and I was so obsessed with these books. I would read them, and I would draw out the family trees. And
oh, how cool!
Some of the original characters in the family were like witches, and they were burned. And I remember just reading about them and the way they moved and the power that they had.
Right.
Power meaning like the power of owning their own space and knowing what they wanted.
Yes.
And going after it and being assertive and confident, like that type of power. And I remember being like, I feel that and I want that. And I think as a young woman, I was looking for, how do I have that? How do I get that? Who is that? And how does this like awkward braces wearing, you know, pimple faced
girl get a little piece of that, right?
Yeah, like teenager in rural Missouri.
Yeah. So is it just out of curiosity? Is the book all set in colonial times, or is
no?
It
they grow. Like the book covers multiple generations, which is why I was like rocking out that family tree.
Okay, the family. Okay, gotcha.
Also, what teenager like hangs out and is drawing fictional family? I mean, jeez.
Maybe someone who read Shakespeare when they were younger.
Right.
This is why we relate.
I'm sure my parents were. I'm sure they were just like, "What the heck is going on with that girl?"
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, I know. But it keeps you out of the bingo parlors. Like they didn't worry about you running the streets because you were sitting there doing that family tree.
I was drawing a family tree for fictional which family?
Well, good for you. I'm actually kind of impressed. So we have
Morticia Adams.
Oh.
So I want to explain a little bit of my feeling around the Adams family as a child, and even today. I was always drawn to the Adams family.
Now, are we talking the television show or the films?
So I'm talking about the original black and white television show. I was always drawn to the Adams family when I was really young. I used to watch Nick at Night, which showed like these older
I remember
shows.
when they came out originally. So.
Oh my.
Yeah, generational stuff. Okay,
but I was always drawn to it. I loved. First of all, I loved Morticia's clothing, and I loved her sexiness. I loved the sexiness of like the power and the confidence that she had, and the way her husband like adored her.
Yes.
But I was always really scared of the macabre. I was never comfortable with that. And my old roommate that we both know, she is like she lives in the macabre.
It's like, bring more macabre.
Yeah. So like, you know, like I'd walk by her room and she'd have like a this beautiful painting of this woman whose eyeballs are on a plate.
Yes,
you know? And so I was just like always uncomfortable with it. Just like I still am with that, and I was also with The Nightmare Before Christmas, like just other movies that are kind of like edgy, Edward Scissorhands, like just things that are macabre. I'm always uncomfortable with, but I'm drawn to it too, just like the Addams Family.
Right. So for me, the Addams Family spoke to me. I think on a certain level they were closer to my family than my real family. And I don't know why. I mean, they were a bunch of old white people. I mean, well, you know, but it was just how they lived in their house. It was this, I don't know if it was dirty or not, but it was this dark house, but it was their home and they inhabited it. And then I loved the television show. I didn't, I just kind of felt really seen by the television show, but I didn't give it that much thought until the films came out. I guess they came out in the 80s maybe, or the 90s, and the films blew my head off because I was older and I was kind of over that type of thinking. And so the fact that I could be affected the way I had been as a child by these films just totally amazed me. And Angelica Houston, right, is the Morticia. I mean, she was just amazing. And like there was one part where they were putting her on the rack. I think they were going to try to get some information out of her, and she kind of looked at her husband and said something like, "We'll take it home later," or whatever. And it's just like, oh my God, just like that kind of skating over like the sensual, like what's the word? Senses. The experience of your senses is the experience of your senses. And it could be pain, it could be pleasure, it could be kind of this strange combination of the two, but you're living in your body. And she did that. And I saw little bits of it in Wednesday, the daughter, like she would grow up to be just as badass. I just so love that.
My favorite scene is from the movie where she goes to summer camp.
Oh,
possibly because I run a summer camp. And I've been going to I've been working at this summer camp like for decades, and like I just love, and I can so identify with this, like, she just has this alternate experience from everyone else. Yes. And this alternate experience from what is accepted as normal. Yes. And I feel like I feel that all the time.
Yes, so much. So yeah, I really love it's counterculture. So I love that. Anything that's counterculture seemed to have spoken to me when I was younger, and then as I got older and stopped resisting it, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about this in a different episode. But so it's counterculture, but it's also it's sexy and it's powerful, and they live their lives. That's the part that's so attractive to me.
I think we see in our culture there's definite resistance around women owning their sexuality. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. And being sexual and being like that, being positive. Mm-hmm. And displaying that sexuality. So it definitely feels like there's a lot of pushback against that, which you talked about earlier, about having to like bring them back into the fold and punish them or whatever, or they die or whatever. But I love that is a part of who I am, and that's a part of my magic, and that's a part of my experience, and that's a part of our culture as witches that are supported. I see you as like embodying that in this really way that is so empowering to me.
I'm so glad. I try. I sometimes really succeed and sometimes maybe not so much, but as I've gotten older, it's like, what the hell am I waiting for? I can't wait for my culture to affirm me. And so one of my goals is at my age, doing this now, is that I can be a model for younger people so that you don't have to live through the years of living for other people like I did. And I love it. There's some younger women in our circle, younger even than you. And so, and it's just so amazing to see them just kind of bypass so much of the bullshit that I lived through.
Another iteration of the witch type that we keep talking about is the Old Hag. So instantly what pops up into my mind is the Snow White villain witch with like the hunched forward, with the long nose, with the warts and the things sticking off of it, and the scraggly teeth and the scraggly hair. And...
the Broomhilda. Yeah. But Broomhilda is the comic version. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that also, she's single in the woods by herself. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so that's kind of this cartoon image that most people think of, right? So when I remember someone saying, reading somewhere that a little kid said, "Oh, you don't look like a witch," because that's the image we have. Mm-hmm. Cartoons reinforce that. Commercials reinforce that. We get that over and over again. But what I find interesting is that the actual archetype is a real one. Not the hag part, but this idea of this woman who is outside of the culture. And so often it was, they were considered the wise women. They didn't live they were often unmarried or widowed or whatever. They lived on the outskirts of town, so they didn't have to worry about, living societal expectations. And the women came to them for their potions and their tinctures and things like that. The problem being, of course, that when things went wrong, they also got the blame, right? And they were the ones who were they were the first ones that would be attacked when the witch hunts started. But that archetype of knowing, of being one with the land, is to me so important, and kind of like a model for me.
That there was definite freedom in not being shackled by society's expectations, especially back then. But then there was definitely also that cost,
right,
that may happen.
That's right. They paid, and I'm sure they kind of gladly paid that price to, they had a little bit of contact with society, but they were the outskirts, and they liked it. They liked being there, so they liked that part of it. And then the flip side of that, because we still have these women who do this, but now they're kind of held up. Before, people were afraid of them. Now they're kind of held up for ridicule, kind of like Broomhilda or whatever. And that's the old lady who lives in the unkept house down at the end of the road, and the kids throw rocks through her windows, and she's like the neighborhood cat lady. She has tons and tons of cats, and they're afraid that she'll die and no one will know for 4 or 5 days, and the cats will have half eaten her or something like that. But we still have that type of caricature, that stereotype, even today. And it's to me, it's kind of sad that, again, women who are not fitting the mold are put in another mold, right?
Yeah, it definitely feels like being shoved into, like a square being shoved into a round hole. It just doesn't fit. I love practical magic. The ants.
Yes.
I love them, and my sister and I joke about it, but it's also a serious thing where we talk about, when we're older, we're going to get a Victorian house on the outskirts of a town, and we're just going to have a ton of plants, and people will come to us for things, and we'll give them some herbs and some candles, and we'll be left alone, kind of to our own devices.
Yes.
And that is serious goals.
Yeah.
Serious goals.
And what's so amazing, though, I'm trying to remember. I think I read the book I can't remember which one I'd read, but I just remember being so struck by the difference between the film and the book. The book is much darker, and it really reflects more that archetype that I meant, the woman on the edge of the town, and the price that they pay, because they talk a lot about the prices that they pay in the book, and we don't see that as much in the film. It's a little bit darker, but I think to me that's kind of true to, particularly in a earlier time, maybe not so much today, that women kind of committed, like you and your sister, they committed to this lifestyle knowing that there's going to be prices that they pay.
I am happy to pay those prices. Maybe I'm not happy, but I am willing to pay those prices for what I want to create out of my life.
That makes so much sense.
And I'm so grateful to come into a community and to have the complexities of life and light and dark and a witch's ethics be challenged by those things. And I would much rather be dealing with those things and to be the ants on the outskirts of town.
Right. And you talk about being in our circle, in our group. One of the things I love about the group is that we don't have stereotypes. We have just a bunch of women who are all witches, and they're all different. And so seeing that helps to affirm the choices that I make.
The underlying thing that I kept thinking about as we were talking about all of these different images, the fact that they're paradoxical, they're incomplete, they're contradictory, they're oftentimes demonized, is that it's just a constant resistance to being pulled back into what is supposed to be okay by our culture.
Right.
And what I noticed is that I was constantly looking for affirmation from our culture saying, these parts of you are okay. It's okay to be this way. And it's okay to follow that and to question it. And I guess what I was constantly doing was seeking some place to tell me that I was okay, and never finding a complete image of that. And so I had to pick little pieces, picking Mary Poppins' bag and picking these witches stories from R.L. Stein, and picking that I was scared of, but kind of liked Morticia Adams, and then Willow is cool, from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I'm going to, so I was picking all of these. So then I'm sewing together this Frankenstein's monster of identity, trying to figure out who who I am.
Yes. Well, so the beauty of this, and one of the things about stereotypes is that for it to be a stereotype, there has to be some little grain of truth, right? There has to be, that type of, the pagan, fluffy pagan bunny. There has to be like the goth girl, there's all of those things. And one of the things that I think is gradually, slowly, tortuously happening in our society today is allowing more people to start to self-define. And by that meaning dropping the need for a stereotype, or for even trying to fight against the stereotype, because you don't have to do that. I mean, it's slow, right? But, even just using, preferred pronouns, or pronouns now, they say it's not preferred, but pronouns is one teeny weeny baby step in that direction. And so, we're growing eventually. We'll get to the point where the young woman who may be a baby at this point can make that decision. Okay, this is who I am, and not have to worry about, am I this, that, or the other? Do I have to push back against that? Can I wear black? Just an opportunity for us to explore all the facets of ourselves, and then make that what we decide that to be.
I wonder what'll happen with my niece, who grew up with me and her mom going to ritual, having ritual at her house, having an altar out at her house. I just wonder what it would be like to grow up with that space. Yeah. And she chooses to wear a pentacle. She's in high school. She's a senior. She chooses to wear my pentacle that I wore when I was in college, as a part of her identity. It's going to be interesting to see like how that goes. Yes.
As the advanced guard, it'll be nice to look back and see, to maybe from wherever we are, from the graveyards, see what these young women coming up are doing with this.
Hopefully they'll come dance in the graveyards with us.
Damn. So, since we've been talking about the wise woman on the outskirts of town, I have a wonderful recording by Monica McGee, and I want to say that the other name is pronounced Lemonchi because it's Irish, and it's Wise Woman.
We're so wise for picking that.
But it's very haunting, and it kind of, in my opinion, encapsulates some of the things that we were saying about that.
Perhaps we might encourage our listeners, if they desired, to treat it like I treat the craft, which is I stopping it at the end of the beach scene, because I don't really need to see the rest.
No. We're just going to play a little bit of it. I would encourage you to find it and listen to it online. But again, as we said earlier, there's a downside to being the woman on the edge of the forest, and the song does sing about that towards the end. So it takes a little bit of a dark turn, but it's not going to be listened to. You're not going to hear it just now.
We're just going to play the yummy parts.
The yummy parts, exactly.
Wise woman lives on the outskirts of town and scribbles symbols, words in the ground. Wise woman laughs at the chatter of birds and reaps all the seeds and gathers her herbs.
We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our Witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!